First of all, a very, very big Yishar Koach, and thanking the Ribono Shel Olam for tremendous kindness. This is the second week in a row where we have a lot of new faces and a lot of old faces, which is very, very nice to see. I'm glad they haven't kicked Noam out of the yeshiva yet, and he's still here because I love Noam very much. And it's always a pleasure to see everyone. So thank you very, very much for everyone for showing up, and despite the late hour. So a bit of background to this year, to this chabura, this conversation. I attempted to give over this topic during Hanukkah. I attempted to give over this topic, thinking that it would be a relatively simple topic to give over. And Toch Kedei this year, which really did not go well, people were thinking it was going to be like a 5-10 minute Dvar Torah, and I came prepared for a whole shir. And Toch Kedei, I realized that this is much, much more complicated and requiring a lot more iyun than I had prepared for. So Bezrat Hashem, we're going to do our best over here. We're going to do our best. This is not simple, but I'm at the edge of my capacity over here. So we'll all try as best we can. So this week, as we all know, we went through the Tzom of Asara B'Teves, Tzom HaAsiri, the fast of the month of Teves, which marks various events in Jewish history. And one of the things that are marked in this parsha, in this event rather, is the writing down of the Torah in Greek. And there are different versions of this event in Chazal, but one of them is in Maseches Sofrim, in Perek Aleph, Mishnah Zayin of Maseches Sofrim. Maisa Behei Zikenim. There were 5 elders of the Jewish people, Shekosfu L'Talmai HaMelech HaSatorah Yavonis, that they wrote down the Torah in Greek for Talmai HaMelech, the Ptolemy, and after Alexander the Great dies, so the Macedonian Empire is divided into 3 sections: the European section, the Assyrian Greek section, which is the villains in the Hanukkah story, and the Ptolemies, which are in Egypt, based in Egypt. So they write this translation for the Torah for Talmai HaMelech. As the Gemara in Megillah tells us, there were a variety of miracles that occurred. This is almost certainly the same story that's told over in the Gemara, which involves slightly more Zakanim. It's not 5, it's more like 70, but whatever. There's more, right? They all come up with a uniform translation. But it seems that there was a high demand for the Torah to be translated from Hebrew into Greek. And these Zakanim, they translated the Torah into Greek. V'haya hayom kasha li Yisrael kiyom shenase ha'egel. And this day that the Torah was translated into Greek was so calamitous for the Jewish people, it was akin to the day that the Egel HaZahav was built. Now that already, just off the bat, is extraordinary to say such a thing. That there was a day in Jewish history that was as bad as the Chet HaEgel. And why was it as bad as the Chet HaEgel? Says the Mishnah, Shalom Haisa HaTorah Yechola Liyitargem Kol Tzorka. That the Torah was not able to be translated to its fullest extent. So 2 incredible things that are being asserted here. Assertion number 1 is that the day that the Torah was translated into Greek was so bad, it was as bad as the Chet HaEgel. And the reason that it was as bad as the Chet HaEgel is because it wasn't able to be translated to its fullest extent. And as we iterated a moment ago, this is one of the reasons that the fast of Teves takes place. This is one of the reasons. So, Pilei Playim, what exactly is going on? So, Rabbosai, in order to unpack this fully, we need to delve in. We need to take a deep dive in understanding the roots of speech itself, and how speech relates to the Torah as such, the Torah that we have. Now, highlighting this strangeness, we have to add another layer of question over here. We have to add another layer of question. Okay? The Gemara in Megillah on Daf Tes says that the Torah, here, we have it in front of us, we might as well. The Gemara in Megillah says the following. Ein bein svarim l'tfilim mezuzah l'shasvarim lichtovim b'chol lashon. Svarim are allowed to be written in any language. Rashbag Omer, and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says no, that's not correct. The Sefer Torah cannot be written in any language. The Svarim lo yitiru sheyichtavu ela Yavanis. The only language that is allowed, that the Sefer Torah is allowed to be written in, other than Hebrew, is Greek. Says the Gemara, how is it that we know that the Torah is allowed to be written in Greek? So says the Gemara, Mikra on Udarshim, we are Dorish the pasuk from where? From Parshas Noach, all the way in the very beginning of the story in Parshas Noach. Yaft Elokim liyefes v'yishkon ba'ol le'shem. That Yafyuso shel Yefes, the Yafyuso, which we will get back to that word, what exactly that word means. Yafyuso shel Yefes, Yishkon ba'ol le'shem, will dwell in the tents of shame. So you see, Rabbosai, how this only highlights the question even more. Not only are we told that the translation of the Torah into Greek was a calamity, akin to the Maaseh HaEgel, but Chazal themselves tell us that the only language that the Torah is able to be translated in is in Greek. And the reason for this is because Yefes participated with Shem in the proper treatment of their downtrodden father. And for this, they were both given a blessing that Shem will embody the domain of the spirit, and the Yafyuso Shel Yefes will permeate those tents of Shem. There will be some type of partnership between Shem and Yefes, is that together that they will be able to dwell together in the same tent. And Shem, being the eventual producers of the Torah, Yefes will dwell with them. Yeah, go ahead.
But doesn't the Gemara Megillah say that the Targum comes from Chagei Zechar Malachi, which is there before the story?
It's not the same Targum. No, we're talking about that's talking about the Targum Uziel. The beginning of the Gemara Megillah says the Targum Uziel is a Masorah from Chagei Zechar and Malachi, and it was eventually written down by Targum Uziel. But this is a different Targum. This is a Targum significantly later in history and in Greek. So we see that this is a very, very big problem. Okay, now that we understand the extent of the problem, so we're going to revert back. We said we're going to have to go to the depths of understanding what exactly Lashon is. In the very beginning of Ma'aseh Bereshis, we are told that HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates Adam. Vayifach be'apav nishmas chayim. We talked about this pasuk when we were dealing with the parshios of Avram Avinu. We talked about this a lot. Vayifach be'apav nishmas chayim, that God imbued Adam with a godly soul. Vayihi ha'adam lenefesh chaya, that man became a living soul. Says Unclus on that pasuk, Vayihi ha'adam lenefesh chaya, leruach memalela, to a speaking spirit. Perush, that the ability for Adam to speak is the defining characteristic of Adam as such. The defining characteristic of Adam is that he is able to speak. Meaning that a human being is unique in that they are able to take the world of the ethereal, the world of the intellectual, the world of the spiritual, and communicate that out into the world, to be able to express that with a clarity, to be able to express that with a fullness and a richness. I'm reading from the Bereshis Rabbah in Parsha Lamed Vav. Parsha Lamed Vav, going back to Yaf Elokim liyefes v'yishkon ba'ol le'shem. Vayomer Baruch Hashem Elokei Shem, Amar Reish Lakish, Af mi Yefes amdu ba'ol le'shem. Those from Yefes will stand within the tents of Shem. Yafta Lukim Yefes, Ze Koresh who goes Shibana Beis Hamikdash. First of all, you have Koresh, which is also the Persian king, who is a descendant of Yefes, who decrees to build the Beis Hamikdash. Bar Kapara Amar, you divrei Torah ne'emarim b'lishono shel Yefes, besoch ol eishem. Rabbi Yudan Amar, mikan letargum min haTorah. From here we see the imperative to translate the Torah. Haduhu dichsiv, as it says in the pasuk in Nehemiah, vayikru basefer Torah Elokim, that they read in the book of the Torah of God. This is a very important parak, by the way, because all the halachas of Hilchos Sefer Torah are learned from this parak of parak Ches of Nehemiah. Zeh HaMikra. This is referring to the psukim of the Torah. Meforash explained. Zeh HaTargum. V'som seichel ela ta'amim. The seichel, the flavor or the deeper meaning, those are the ta'amim, the tra. Now there is a perush on the Medrash Rabbah. A perush that's interesting just to know, practically speaking, on Bereishis Rabbah, there's a perush that's printed inside the standard Bereishis Rabbahs that says perush Rashi. Now, the Chida in Shem Gedolim says that this is not Rashi Shlomo Yitzchaki that lived in France in the early 1100s. Rather, this is almost certainly a Chacham from Italy that compiled a Perush on Bereishis Rabbah. We don't know exactly the identity of this Perush. However, all the Gedolei HaMefarshim, including the Matnas Kahuna and the Marzav, and all the important Perushim on Midrash Rabbah, quote this Perush Rashi and say that this is a worthy source, and it's certainly worth quoting. So Perush Rashi on this Midrash Rabbah in Parsha Lamed Vav says the following. Yafyuso shel Yefes milashon harchava. Harchava. How do you say with in Aramaic? Anyone know how you say with in Aramaic? Putye verume. The width and the height. The width and the height. Putye verume. When it says Yaft Elokim liyefes, what does that mean? It doesn't mean like Yefes milashon yafeh, nice. It means Yefes milashon harchava, to make wide. To make something wide. God will make wide. We see later on in the Torah, just to give you an example, we see later on in the Torah by the bracha of Moshe Rabbeinu to God, Baruch marchiv God. Blessed is the one who makes God wide. He expands his domain. And Onkla says over there, Yaft legad. God will give putye v'rumeh. He will give breath to God, to the Shevet of God. So when it says Yaft Elokim liyefes, what it's saying is that there is a power in Yefes that is able to expand things. And this expansive capacity will be within the tents of Shem. And mikan l'targum min Torah. This is the function of the Targum. The function of the Targum is to make the Torah wide. That's the function of the Targum. Listen to a Gemara in Eruvin, Rabbi Say. Gemara in Eruvin says the following. Daf Chaf Aleph. Put a little tissue in here for me. Hashem. Gemara in Eruvin says the following. This is a quote. The Gemara is darshaning psukim from Sefer Zechariah. The angel comes to Zechariah and says, "What vision do you see?" I see a folded scroll. A folded scroll. Arka esrin ba'ama v'rochba eser ba'ama. That it's 20 amos wide, 20 amos long rather, and 10 amos wide. So says the Gemara, "V'chi pashatetala." When you open up the scroll, meaning when you unfold it, havila esrin de esrin, it becomes 20 by 20. Uchsiv, and the pasuk continues, "Ksuva panim ve'achor." It's written on the front and the back. V'chi kafaltala, and when you peel off one layer of the scroll, kama havya, how much is it? Arbain de esrin. It's now 40 amos by 20. Uchsiv mi modad b'shalom mayim, and the pasuk in Yeshayahu says that God measures the water with his shoe kavayachol, like as a form of measurement, just like we use our ama to measure things. So totu kavayachol. God uses that b'shamayim bezeres tikein, and God measures the entire heavens with his pinky. Nimsa, says the Gemara, ha'olam kulo echad mishlosha alafim mosayim b'Torah. The entire world is 2,300 measures of the Torah itself. Now, what that specific measure is not part of the conversation. But the point is that the Gemara is describing this vision of Zechariah, that the Megillah Afah is the Torah. The Torah is a folded up scroll. It's folded tightly and compact. And you unfold it once, and you unfold it again, and again, and you see that, it's written on both sides. Not only is it written on both sides, but you have to peel it open. It's like the pages are stuck together. You're constantly peeling open the Torah and unfolding it and reading the back and reading the front. It's an endlessly unfolding scroll. That is the vision that Zechariah has of the Torah. Says the Maharsha. The Maharsha on this Gemara says an incredible thing. He says that this is revealing the nature of the different levels that we associate with the interpretation of the Torah. As the Gemara in Chagigah tells us, that there is this dimension of interpreting Torah called the Pardes, Pshat, Remez, Drosh, Vesod. Okay? So unfolding the Torah is getting to more additional layers of interpretation of the Torah. The unfolded Torah is the pshat. You open up another layer, it's the remez. You open up another layer, drush. Open up another layer, it's the sod. This gives insight, by the way, Rabbosai, and this is actually a very good question. Someone here in the Chabur asked this question a while ago. I didn't have a ready answer, but I believe that this is the answer. In the Gemara and Chagiga that tells us about the Pardes, Nichnasu Pardes, ostensibly, where are these individuals going, these four great individuals? Which layer of interpretation of the Torah are they going into? Which one? The Sod, right? That's kind of what they're going into. So why is the Sod called the Pardes? Why is it? Elon, did you ask this question? I think you asked this question. Yeah, of course it was Elon, right? Why is the Sod called the Pardes? It should be called the Sa, right? It's not the Pardes. The Pardes are the other layers. Elamai, Rabosa, you understand what's going on? The Sod is just all the layers unfolded completely so you can see the whole picture. That's what it is. When the Torah is completely unfolded, then you see everything. Bosak, do you understand what's going on? In order to get the Torah, in order to get the full extent of the Torah needs to be unfolded. It needs to be widened. It needs to be widened. And this power of widening content so that it could be fully unpacked and unfolded and revealed, that power was given to Yefes. Yaft Elokim leyefes. God will widen Yefes. He will widen it. And that lashon is meant to be given. There's meant to be a cooperative enterprise between Shem and Yefes in order to widen the Torah. This gives insight, Rabbosai, as to what exactly is the calamity that the Mishnah is saying that we fast on Asara B'Teves for. Shalo yochla Torah litargem kol tzarka. There was something that was meant to happen in the world. What was meant to happen? What was meant to happen is that the Yaft Elokim leyefes, the expansive capacity of Yefes, was meant to reveal the Torah. Ela shalo yochla litargem kol tzarka. It wasn't translated to its fullest extent. That was the calamity. The calamity was that we missed the boat. We missed the boat for that cooperative enterprise between Yefes and Shem, which was supposed to happen in the world. That was missed. It was missed. That was the missed opportunity. V'haya hayom kasha kiyom asiyas ha'egel. It was as bad as when the egel was built. Okay, who knows where that term kasha kasiyas ha'egel appears another time in Shas? Oh, there you go, Tepler. That's why we have you. Baruch Hashem. Daf? No, I'm not sure. What's the context? You want to say it over? Oh, Machon. So the Gemara says on Daf Yud Zayin in the Bavli and Shabbos that the day that they argued over this, what's known as the 18 Gezeros, the 18 decrees that have to do mostly with Tumah and Tara, all Tumah and Tara, and there was tremendous opposition on both sides of the aisle, so to speak, about how to enact these Gezeros. The Yerushalmi implies that there was even violence that broke out between the camps of Shammai and Hillel. And the Gemara says, "V'haya hayom kasha kiyom asiyas ha'egel," was as bad as when the Egel Azav was built. Why was it as bad as the day that the Egel was built? Why was it as bad? The Bavli in Sanhedrin in Peiches tells us about the nature of the machlokas, the perpetual schism between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. As we know, very rarely is it Shammai and Hillel arguing. It's always Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Says the Gemara on Peiches Amud Beis, Misharabu Talmidei Shammai v'Hillel shalosh shimshu kol tzarkan. When the students of Shammai and Hillel that had not served their masters to the fullest extent, Rabu machlokas b'Yisrael, there became tremendous argumentation within the Jewish people. V'naases Torah kishtei Toros. And the Torah became as if it was two separate Torahs. You understand what's going on? The machlokas between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel was such a schism in the Jewish people that it was as if there were two different Torahs. Because of the lack of clarity that these warring camps caused in the giving over of Torah, it was like the Egel. What happened on the day of the Egel, Rabbosai? What happened on the day of the Egel? The day that the Egel was built, what happened to the Torah? the luchos that came into the world, the luchos that were Maisa Elokim Hema, were destroyed. That level of clarity of insight into Torah. And we'll talk about this Bezrat Hashem when we get there. But the difference between the Luchos Rishonos and the Luchos Shnios, it's an explicit pasuk in the Torah. What's the fundamental difference between the first Luchos and the second Luchos? Moshe made the second Luchos, as opposed to the first Luchos. V'haluchos masa Elohim hema. The Luchos were fashioned by God. V'hamichtav michtav Elohim hema. And the writing was divine writing. The second Luchos, no, Moshe fashioned them. I'll write the same writing that were on the first tablets that you broke. But the luchos themselves were fashioned by Moshe Rabbeinu. The luchos themselves were already material, natural objects. They weren't supernatural like the first luchos. That clarity of insight into Torah was destroyed. And that is the calamity of the Shtei Toros. The lack of clarity in the giving over of Torah, the machlokas of Shammai and Hillel, and this is the same type of calamity, says the Mishnah in Sofrim, the same calamity of the missed opportunity to bring in a harchava, a yaft elokim liyefes, an expansion of Torah knowledge that could have come about with the cooperation of Shem and Yefes was missed. It was as bad as the day that the Egel Hazav was built. There's a makor in Divrei Hayamim. Divrei Hayamim Beis, Perek Daled, Mishnah, Pasuk Yud Zayin. It's a makor you're not going to hear, excuse me, that you're not going to hear anywhere else, but I have to give you something good once in a while, or else no one will come back. So the pasuk in Divrei Hayamim, Rashi on Divrei Hayamim in general is just incredible. The stuff that Rashi and Divrei Hayamim tells you, it's like Soda Satorah. It's unbelievable. So it says the pasuk in Divrei Hayamim that as Shlomo HaMelech's rule started to deteriorate, there was this man, this official in the Shlomo government who started to foment some opposition to him, and this man's name was none other than Yeravam ben Nevat. And where was Yeravam ben Nevat from? So says the pasuk, "Bekikar HaYarden Yitzakam HaMelech ba'ovei Adama bein Sukos ubein Sreidasa." This place called Sreidasa in Aver HaYarden. Excuse me, Kikar HaYarden. It's not the same. Kikar HaYarden, like the I guess the Jordan Valley. Says Rashi on this pasuk Sreidasa, Yud Zayin. Okay. Uve Malachim, says Rashi, and in Sefer Malachim Kasuv Seirasam. That same place, Sreidasa, is called Sarasam. Hu Makomo Shel Yeravam ben Nevat. This is the place of Yeravam ben Nevat Efrati Minat Sreida. V'Shem Imot Tzurua Ish Alman. Fine. Says Rashi, why is this place? Why is the actual name of the place is Sartan? Why here is it called Sreidasa? Means Sreidasa Sheheitzar es HaTorah, because Yeravam ben Nevat narrowed the Torah velo hirchiva and did not expand it. Sreidasa Tsar Das. Tsar Das. He constricted the Das. He constricted the Torah. I will say, what is the story of Yeravam ben Nevat? We've talked about this in different contexts over here. What happened with Yeravam ben Nevat? Yeravam ben Nevat was the star Talmud of none other than Achia Shiloni, the star Talmud. And as the Gemara in Sanhedrin and Daf Kuf Daled tells us, right, V'shneim levadam basadeh, that when God tells Achia to go anoint Yeravam to be the king over the 10 northern tribes, they're both alone in the field. Says the Gemara, what does that mean they were both alone in the field? That they were alone in their greatness in Torah. They were the two greatest of the generation. Basadeh in the field, Shakol Sistrei Torah Higuluyim Lifneim Kesadeh. That all the secrets of Torah were revealed before them like an open field, like you're standing in an open plain, you can see everything before you. These were the two Gedolei Hador, the two greatest of the generation. And as we know, Yeravam takes a precipitous fall right after he becomes king. It's like off the deep end. You see what this is saying? Sheheitzer das v'lo yerchiva. This was a man that could have brought expansion to the Torah. This was a unique individual that could have expanded the Torah, but he didn't. Tsar das v'lo yerchiva. want to bring this back to Inyana Dioma, what we're talking about now in our current parshios. The pasuk in Shemos tells us that there is a conversation between Moshe Rabbeinu and HaKadosh Baruch Hu about God sending Moshe Rabbeinu as a messenger to the Jewish people. And Moshe, he refuses God's instruction initially. He says, I can't go. Lo ish dvarim anochi. I'm not a person of words. I can't speak. I'm not good at speaking. What does that mean, that you're not good at speaking? Says the Maharal in Gvuras Hashem Perek Chav Ches. Yesh lahakshos. Moshe shehaya lo kol ha'ma'alos. We see that Moshe Rabbeinu had all of the fullness, whether fullness of intellect or fullness of body, as the Psukim and Chazal make very, very clear. So how is it that Moshe says about himself that he has difficulty speaking? Says the Maharal, ki mipnei shehaya Moshe rachok min hachomer, that Moshe Rabbeinu was so far away from all material things. There is no aspect of a human being that is more externalizing than the mouth and the tongue. And he compares that to all the other senses, that sight, for example, sound, they're all things that are ethereal. They're receiving ethereal messages from the world. There's another makor for this that's worth quoting. The grandson of the Ramban was a chacham in Spain by the name of Levi ben Gershom. Levi ben Gershom, I believe he was a great grandson of the Ramban, and he wrote a rather controversial sefer on Machshava called Milchamos Hashem, probably because his grandfather wrote a book by the same title. But he also wrote a perush on the Chumash. The Maharal devotes an entire hakdama to Sefer Gvuras Hashem to chastise the Ralbag for his understanding of the nature of really of all of Elokus, but specifically his nature, the understanding of his understanding of miracles and how they work. So the Maharal is not a fan of the Ralbag. However, on this point, the Maharal and the Ralbag absolutely agree. The Ralbag in his perush on Sefer Shemos says the following: why was it that Moshe Rabbeinu had difficulty speaking? Sheimnaoso otzem hisbodeduso bahashgachoso, because of his intense fusing of Moshe's consciousness to the divine. It was so difficult mila'afri to separate mehadvekos hazeh ba'ofen she'uchal lishtadel sader dvarayim b'nei adam, in a way that I can express these things with people. B'derech she'yishalem li sidor hadvarim kahogen, in a way that I will be able to express them in a way that people can understand them. Meaning, we are seeing that there is a schism over here. There is a schism between the internal world of the ethereal, of the spiritual, and the ability to speak it out. There is a schism over here. There is a deep, deep schism. And to the extent that a person is oriented to that world of the ethereal, to the world of the completely mufshat, of the completely abstract, it becomes exceedingly difficult to be able to express this. Which is why HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, fine, so I know Aaron, your brother, ki daber yidaberhu. He's actually good at speaking. He is good at speaking. Right? And which is why the pasuk says that Aaron, what is Aaron's function to Moshe? As the psukim say explicitly, Va'aron achicha yihiyeh niviecha, that Aaron will be your navi. What does that mean, that Aaron will be your navi? Navi milashon nivs fasayim, to speak. Moshe couldn't speak. He had the idea in his head, but he couldn't translate it into speech. He couldn't speak it out explicitly in a way that people will be able to understand it. For that, he needed an Aaron, and Aaron was there in order to help him out with that. The Maharal uses this to segue into an extremely powerful yesod, and to this we'll tie this back to even more of the themes that we're talking about now. B'ezrat Hashem. Kasher Tavin Zeh, when you understand this idea, this idea of the schism between the world of the Seichel, the internal world of the Seichel, and the ability to express it outwards in speech. Tavin Gam Masha Amru Razal B'Perak HaMapeles, that which Chazal say in the Gemara and Nida and Daf Lamed. Kshavlad Yotze La'avir HaOlam, the moment that a child is born, Ba Malach V'Sotro Al Piv, a Malach comes and strikes him on the mouth, U'Mishakeach Mimenu Kol HaTorah, and through that he forgets the entire Torah. As Chazal say in that Gemara leading up to this line, that there is a malach, that there is a light lit above the child's head, a light lit above the head, and through this light he sees Misofa Olam Ad Sofo, he sees the full expanse of reality, and the entire Torah is downloaded into his consciousness. And at the moment of birth, there is an angel that comes and strikes him on the mouth, and through that he forgets the entire Torah. Lama Amru Sasra Al Piv, says the Maharal. Why does it say that he strikes him on the mouth? The mouth that makes the person a corporal, material being, hu mishakeach mimenu haTorah. That is the thing that makes the person forget the Torah. Uperish zeh ki ha'adam ischaber bo haneshama al hachomer. The moment that the soul fuses with the corporal body, she'ein haneshama hasichlis mechubar bo b'chomer dahainu ba'od shelo yotze la'avir ha'olam. Before the child exits the womb, he's not a fully corporal human being yet. He's still like in the domain of the spiritual. He's not a full physical human being yet. Az haneshama nivdeles, the soul is still hovering over the body. It's not fused with the body. Ube'es yitziaso nigmar briaso. At the moment that he leaves, that fusing of the body and the soul is completed. V'achasher tischaber haneshama el haguf, and that is the moment that the soul is infused in the body. The Maharal goes on to explain, using the well-known Midrash Rabbah, also from Bereshis. She'ein kol esev ve'esev she'ein bo malach shemakehu ve'omer gadol. That there is no blade of grass that doesn't have a malach that is striking it and telling it to grow. So when we say that the malach comes and strikes the mouth, what does that mean? Strikes it on the mouth. It's not like hitting it in order to give it a punishment. It's striking it and telling it grow, develop. It's giving the prod for the mouth to develop. It's saying, now you, power of speech, develop. Once a person learns how to speak, they forget the Torah. They forget the Torah with that ability. Why? Why is that? Because that's what speech is. It's the externalizing force. It's the force that draws out. It draws out the internal, ethereal, spiritual world and makes it something concrete and external. And that power can make you forget the Torah. That power of speech can make you literally forget the whole Torah. Which is why Moshe Rabbeinu, who is the recipient of Torah for all the Jewish people, the Dorei Doros, he has difficulty with speaking. Naturally, he's that type of person that he can't express things well because he's so enveloped in that world of the spirit, in the world of thought, that it's difficult for him to externalize these thoughts. It's difficult for him to articulate them. It's difficult for him to articulate these things. Mosai, we have a very, very important yesod, and this is actually connected very strongly to the domain of halacha. There's a machlokas achronim. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with this. Whether a person makes a bracha on thinking words of Torah. Thinking words of Torah. The Gra in Siman Mem Aleph, if I'm not mistaken, says that you make a bracha on thinking words of Torah. What's his raya? As it says in the pasuk in Yoshua, V'higisa bo yomam v'layla. V'higisa bo. Now, what's interesting is that the Gra just takes for granted that Vihigisavo means to think. But fascinatingly, Rabosai, we see that the word Higisa, that Shoresh, Hey Gimel Hey, means both speech and thought. I'm going to read you just a few examples from Yoshua Aleph. Lo yomush sefer Torah zemi picha. This Torah will not be removed from your mouth. Vihigisavo yomam v'layla. It's already a kasha on the Gra, because it could be that the Yisabo Yom Valayla is just a continuity of what it said a second ago. Mipicha, from your mouth. In Tehillim Aleph, Ubatoraso Yehegeh Yomam Valayla. In Tehillim Yotes makes it even more explicit. Yehi l'ratzon imrei fi vehegyon libi. There, hegyon is clearly thought. Hegyon libi. However, a few prakim later, in Tehillim Lamed Zayin, what does it say? Pi tzadik yehegeh chochma. The mouth of the righteous will be hogeh, wisdom. So which one is it? Is hegyon thought or is hegyon speech? Which one is it? The answer is, Rabbosai, and this is a very, very important yesod to understand, that there really is no difference between speaking and thinking in an essential way. Why is that? Because to clarify, again, and this is going back to the yesod that we said about the harchava, of the yafta elokim liyefes, of the expansive capacity of yefes. When a person thinks about an idea, in order to be, and thinks how to express the idea, what is he doing? All he's doing is clarifying the idea for himself. That's all he's doing. It's not just a utilitarian exercise to be able to transmit the thing to someone else who doesn't know the idea that I'm thinking about. No, it's for you as well. It's for you as well. It's for you to be able to clarify the thing. If you can't articulate the idea, there means there's a chisaron by you. There's a lack in you of having perfect clarity in the thing. My father told me a story when I was very young from Einstein. I don't know if this is an apocryphal story or not, but it doesn't matter because it's still true. A guy comes to Einstein and says, "Can you explain to me general relativity?" And he says, "Do you know any math?" "No." "Do you know any physics?" "No." "Okay. When you're sitting on a hot stove, a minute feels like an hour. And when you're sitting on the couch with your girlfriend, an hour feels like a minute." It's like, oh, I got it. There you go. And why? Because he understood what relativity was. He's the one that really understood what it was. For him, it could be complex equations on a blackboard, and it could also be a simple mashal like that. It was the same thing. Because he had it so clear in his mind that it could be communicated in that way, with that clarity. If the thing cannot be communicated, it means that you haven't thought about it enough. That's what it means. Hegeh is hegyon libi, and it's pi tzadik hegeh chochma. It's the same thing. And that's the depths of what we mean. That man became a living soul, l'ruach memala, that he's able to clarify and unpack this domain of the ethereal. That is the proper relationship between the externalizing force of speech and the internalizing domain of chachma. That is the proper relationship. What happens, however, Rabbosai, what happens? The fall becomes when the domain of speech, when the domain of externalization becomes its own thing. It's not connected anymore to the internal world. The words aren't revealing an internal reality. They only exist of their own accord. I want to read you a section from the Moreh Nevuchim. In Chelak Aleph, Perek Ayin Aleph. Chelak Aleph, Perek Ayin Aleph. Says the Rambam. Hamafursam be'uma, there is a statement of Chazal that has become very, very well known in our nation. Devarim she'amarti lecha al peh iyat harashai la'omrim b'chsav. The Gemara in Gittin says, the things that I have told you written down, meaning Torah she'bal peh, you cannot, Torah she'b'chsav, the written down Torah, you're not allowed to give them over bal peh. The Harezu, says the Rambam, Tachlis HaChachma B'Torah. This is the thing that is the foundation of all Torah wisdom. Because there was a tremendous distancing from the wisdom of Torah in what happened later on. Meaning, what did happen later on? That the Torah was in fact written down. All the different opinions and all the different forks in the road, so to speak. Histafuyot, the branching out of the different varieties of interpretations. Because people people make mistakes with understanding what the intent of the author was. Meaning, when you're reading a book, it's hard to understand what the exact intent of the author was. Or forgetting what you heard from the author himself. And this causes tremendous argumentation between people. And they become different kitot, different sects, and confused in their ways. And this is why the end word of Torah, meaning the final psak of halacha, was given to the Sanhedrin, one body that was able to come to these conclusions, so that there wouldn't be, so many conflicting opinions. Continues the Rambam and says, this is what Chazal were trying to get at in the Mishnah in Chagiga. Ba'amram, ein moshim sisrei Torah, ela liyoatz chacham charashim. That a person cannot give over the secrets of Torah unless the person that they know, the student that they're giving over to, is extremely wise. V'zui asiba, says the Rambam, shagarma laheder hayesodos hatzumim halalu mina umma. This is why this domain of Torah study, the secrets of Torah, has largely been lost from our nation, because they couldn't find anyone that was worthy of receiving this information. All that is left are the hints and allusions to this that are scattered throughout the Talmud and the different midrashim. Vehem gargirei toch, and they're like the seeds that are left over from the fruit. Shaleim klipos rabos, or the peels that are left over from the fruit. Achenis asku b'nei adam ba'osam klipos. The people are busy dealing with the peels. That's what they're doing. They think they're eating the fruit, but they're not eating the fruit. They're eating the peels. And they think that there's nothing beyond the peel. They think the peel is all there is. There's no fruit underneath the peel. It's just the klipa. You never think that the Rambam will be talking about klipos, right? Right? They think the klipa is what it is, and there's no fruit underneath the klipa. Yeah? You see what's going on here, Rabbi Osai? You see what's going on here? When you lose the connection, the direct connection to Torah, all you have are the words on the page. And that's where all the problems start. Because you start hocking, you say, oh, well, maybe he meant this, maybe the Svara meant that, and you lose the connection with the essential layer of Torah. The words, they stop being a revelation of an internal essence, and they start being their own thing in and of themselves. And that is a downhill. All the confusion comes from there. I want to read a little ha'ara from Rav Kapach Zatzal, who is responsible for this translation. Once in a while, throughout the Sefer, you find these little daggers of ha'aros by Rav Kapach, who did not, there were no holds barred by Rav Kapach when he wanted to say something. And this is an example. Says Rav Kapach, Kol ze medaber Rabbeinu biyamav. Think about this. That the Rambam was saying that, oh my gosh, there's all these different opinions and people don't know what they're talking about and they're just confused. They're making svaros out of nothing, and there's nothing to say. Svaros rekos, right? Opinions and ideas that are completely based on nothing. The Rambam was saying this in his time, 800 years ago. They weren't even that far away from the time of the Gemara. All the more so in our day. Fire, right? Anyone who just had his first day in yeshiva, he starts making all these diukim from the svarim of the achronim that he happens to have open in front of him. Shakol b'siso, that the whole basis for it, eino ela diukim avirim. They're like floating in the air. They have no basis whatsoever. When a person considers these ideas that are produced, these empty ideas. How far they are away from the Talmud and its spirit. This is where all the problems start, Rabbosai. The problems start when the words become so far away from the essence of the thing that they become their own thing. And then all they do is produce confusion. That's all they do. And such an event, when you have a milestone in this process of distancing us from the essence and the words, as Koheles says at the very, very end, I think the third to last pasuk in Sefer Koheles, right? Rabos Sfarim Lag Basar. All these books, they're the toil of the flesh. Yigios Basar, they're just the toil of the flesh. That's all they are. All these books, Rabos Sfarim, they're nothing. They're a waste. They're just a waste. All you're doing is tiring yourself out by all these books. Because when the books become a separation from the essence, all they do is shut you off. They shut you off. They make you forget the Torah. They literally make you forget the Torah. Learning how to speak makes you forget the Torah. Connect this back to Yosef Atzadik, Be'ezrat Hashem. The Bavli and Sota in Daf Lamed Vav. Darshans from the pasuk in Tehillim, Eidos bi Yosef Samo b'tzeiso al eretz Mitzrayim, that God made a Eidos with Yosef Hatzadik. Through Yosef Hatzadik, God made a testament when he went out to Egypt. What was this miracle that God did with Yosef Hatzadik? What was this miracle? So this miracle was that they had a rule in Egypt. What was the rule? That that only someone who knows Shivim Lashon is able to rule over Egypt. But if you don't know Shivim Lashon, and you can't rule over Egypt. Ba Gavriel Ba'oso Halayla, and that night, meaning the night before the Bechina in the Shivim Lashon, okay? The night before the test, Ba Gavriel V'Hosef Hey Bishmo, he added a Hey into Yosef's name. It wasn't Yosef, it was Yehosef. So he had that extra kick, so to speak, and that downloaded the 70 languages into his mind, and he was able to pass the test. Ba v'diber imparo b'lashon hakodesh, and then Yosef did one up. He emptied it one up. He said, "I know a language that you don't know." He started speaking to him in lashon hakodesh, and Paro didn't know how to. He didn't know how to respond. So Paro said, "Teach me," and Yosef tried to teach him, and Paro didn't understand. So Paro says, "Swear to me that you'll never tell anyone that there's a language that I don't know." And the Gemara continues and says, this was the leverage that Yosef HaTzadik had at the end of his life, when he came to Paro and said, "Listen, I swore to my father that I would bury him in Canaan. So let me go and if I break the oath to my father, I'm going to also break the oath that I made to you. I'm going to let everyone in on our little secret." In the Medrash Me'am Loez, it brings from the Midrash, I believe the Midrash HaGadol, but it's in the Me'am Loez. I tried to look this up, but I can only find the Me'am Loez in Ladino, in the original. I couldn't, and I'm not so up on my Ladino these days, but it's in there. I believe it's from Medrash HaGadol. And it says that there were 70 steps leading from the platform of Yosef up to Paro. And if you can know one language, you can ascend one step. So he ascended one step, and Paro addressed him in one language, and he responded in that language. He went up to the next step, and Paro addressed him in the next language, and Yosef responded. And this happened through all the steps. Paro addressed Yosef in a language, and Yosef responded in that language. And Yosef comes to the top level, and he says, "Shalom Aleichem," and Paro says, "I don't understand." The 70 languages. What does that mean, Rabbosai, the 70 languages? It means the full gamut of being able to have a power of control and manipulation over the world, to articulate ourselves and to project our thoughts in all the possible facets. It's like Chazal say, Shivim Panim. There are 70 faces to the Torah. Shivim Panim la Torah. What does that mean, Shivim Panim? That's the Shivim Lashon. The Shivim Lashon are the Shivim Panim. The 10 possible channels of externalization, of expressing the Torah, are done through these Shivim Lashon. I came across an unbelievable makor, Rabbosai, which I don't think I've ever brought from the Sefer in the context of the Shir. There was a chacham in France in the 1100s named Yosef Bechor Shor, one of the early Balei Tosfos. He's quoted several times throughout Tosfos, but he wrote a Perush on the Torah called Bechor Shor. And in Perek Yud Aleph of Sefer Bereshis, he says the following on the Migdal Bavel story, which we spoke about at length. The Migdal Bavel story. He says the following. He says, "Listen, the people of the Migdal Bavel, they spoke Lashon HaKodesh, and they also spoke all the Shivim Lashon. They spoke all the Shivim Lashon. And what was the fracture of the Migdal Bavel? That everyone forgot all the languages except one. Meaning this guy forgot every language except Chinese, that guy forgot every language except Spanish, and they were all trying to communicate with each other, and no one could remember anything. Meaning they started off that they all had the full spectrum of modalities of expression. They had everything. They had the Shivim Panim. But because, and again, as we spoke about, as we tried to unpack in those chaburas, they used that power for manipulation and control, and God had to remove that from the world, and all they were left with was one small sliver of the panim. Each person only had one small sliver. And what happens when you're in a group of people where all of you only have, your own little narrow perspective? What's going to happen? Of course what's going to happen is that the whole thing's going to dissipate. That's what's going to happen. If there are Shivim Panim and every one of the 70 people only has one of the Panim, then how could there be any continuity? The Midrash Rabbah Bereshis, again, Bereshis Rabbah, in two places. One is in Bereshis Rabbah Ayin Tes, and the other is in Bereshis Rabbah Pei Vav. Bereshit Rabbah Ayin Tes says, Vayar Adonav ki Hashem imo. On the pasuk, that Potiphar identified that Yosef HaTzadik, God was with this man. This was not a regular individual. God was with this person. How did he know? Says the Midrash, Ki Shem Shamayim Shgura Befiv. Because the name of God was in his mouth all the time. He was constantly uttering or remembering God's name all the time. Says the Midrash, El Basof Shochach. However, eventually Yosef forgot. As it says, Ki Nashani Elohim es kol amali. God allowed me to forget. God allowed me to forget. The next Midrash, in Parsha Pevav, it says, excuse me, I switched around the order. The first Midrash that I quoted was from Parsha Pevav. This Midrash that I'm quoting right now is from Ayin Tes. It says, Vayavo Yaakov Shalem. Yaakov comes back from his encounter with the Malach whole. Says the Gemara, says the Midrash rather, Shalem b'Toraso. He was whole in his Torah learning. Despite all of his trials and tribulations with Lavan and with confronting his brother and all that, he still maintained all of his Torah. Says the Midrash, Aval Yosef Shochach, but Yosef forgot his Torah. As it says, Ki Noshani Elohim, because God made me forget. Now, Rabosai, these Midrashim about Yosef HaTzadik forgetting cannot be made literal. It cannot be understood as literal. As the Gemara in Yoma tells us that a person will be given in accounting when he comes to Olam HaEmes, asking him why he didn't study diligently in Torah. And they're going to say, well, I had this excuse. So you're going to say, yeah, well, that guy had your excuse and he still excelled in Torah. So someone's going to come to Shamayim and say, they're going to tell you, why didn't you excel in Torah? He says, listen, I was too good looking and I was distracted by my good looks all day and I had no time to study Torah. Right? We all have that problem, right? So says the Gemara, were you better looking than Yosef HaTzadik? Were you better looking than him? He was on the cover of GQ magazine and he had time to study Torah. Yeah? So Yosef HaTzadik, the idea that he somehow forgot the whole Torah, right? I mean, we see the famous Rashi that we discussed, I think, about how when Yaakov comes, he sends him this coded message with the agalos, like, yeah, the last sugya that we were learning 20 years ago, the last sugya that we were learning was about Egla Arufa. So he eluded the theme of the Egla Arufa and the agalos. The idea that Yosef literally forgot the Torah is not what's being said. It's not what's being said. But what does it mean that Yosef forgets the Torah? Rabosai, how does someone forget the Torah? It's a Gemara Mefareshas. How does someone forget the Torah? The Gemara in Nida that we said. How does someone forget the Torah? When you learn how to speak, you forget the Torah. When you learn how to speak, you forget the Torah. And Yosef goes through a process where he learns how to speak. He has a supernatural encounter, which gives him the ability to speak the Shivim Lashon. He is given the ability to exert control over the world, to navigate the world as needed, to see the chachma, to decode the whole world. It's sofnas paneach. He's the master of speech in this way. This incredibly powerful externalizing force of being able to exert control over the whole world. He has that. He has that capacity. But there's a danger in engaging with this, and the danger is that to the extent that you engage with these lashonos, with these powers of externalization, it's true, they help you manifest and shine that light outward. But the danger is that you distance yourself from that internality that you started off with. That's the danger. And that's what it means, lebasof shochach. Yosef took a hit for this. He took a hit that he forgot the Torah. When Yosef was given the Shivim Lashon, when he was given the Shivim Lashon, he forgot the Torah. And with the reunification with his father and his family, and realizing that he wasn't, as we discussed again at length, that he wasn't actually kicked out of his family, that he really was an authentic part of the Jewish people, and that he did have his place within the family, that brought him back. That had brought him back, right? He really wasn't Noshani as Kol HaMaliv, as Kol Beis Avi. God doesn't really want me to forget my whole father's house. Really, he wants me to come back. But that process of having to externalize himself and be in exile and learn the Shivim Lashon, that made him forget the Torah. It made him forget the Torah. But again, the ideal Rabosai, the ideal, is that these lashonos, these powers of speech, should be able to work in tandem with the world of the internalization, of the internal rather. The yaft elokim leyefes, the yishkon ba'ol leishem, that there will be the domain of chachma developed fully in the tense of shame, and yefes will allow us to expand it. And the trick to making sure that our language doesn't make us forget the Torah, as the Rambam laid out, this is how it works. You write a book, and then before you know it, people are arguing about the diukim of the sentences as opposed to understanding the actual essence of the thing. How do you avoid that? You avoid that by knowing that every word that you speak is meant to be a revelation of something internal. It's meant to be a revelation of something deeper. Why did the Chachmei Talmud have a deeper insight into Torah than us? Because they knew more than us? I don't think that's the reason, Rabbi Osai. I think that anyone who spends a decent amount of time in yeshiva almost certainly knows more information, let's say, more information than many of the Chachmei Talmud. We have more books, we have more stuff, we read more, we spend more hours reading. It's not the information. It's that the insight, the depth, the primacy of their knowledge was so extensive that there's nothing to even talk about. Which is why the whole Gemara, which is essentially the recording of conversations between these Chachamim, leaves out so much information. Why is it that we need a Rashi and a Tosfos and a Rashi in order to just understand the Pshat in 2 lines of Gemara? Because these are conversations between people that are at the pinnacle of insight and understanding of these things, and all of the information that you need just to have a simple understanding for them is taken for granted. It's taken for granted. It doesn't need to be clarified because there's such an essential knowledge of the thing. There's no reason to talk it out, and if you do need to talk it out, you get distracted. The talking out is just distracting from the essence. This is the catch-22 of Lashon. The catch-22 of Dibur. It's the only tool that we have in order to express and externalize, and even in a very powerful way, as we said, Yehegeh versus Yehegeh. Speech is an extension of thought. Being able to articulate is really clarifying the thing. Yes, that is one side. But the other side is the danger. The externalization of the knowledge means you forget the Torah. I want to end off with just one last makor, also from the Maharal. In the Sefer Be'er HaGola, so in the very end, it has a bunch of drushos of the Maharal, drushos that he gave in certain times that were recorded later on. So there's drush ala mitzvos, drush ala Torah, and then there's one called drush l'Shabbos Shuva. Drush l'Shabbos Shuva. So in that drasha, the Maharal goes on an extensive elucidation of the Gemara and Nida that we quoted on Daf Lamed, Amud Beis. All of the different descriptions of how the fetus is formed in the womb and the position that he's in and the different experiences that he has. Every single specific aspect of that description is unpacked and explained. And on the point that we brought before about the idea of that the child is struck on the mouth. So it says the Maharal, V'sasra al piv u'mishakeach mimenu kol haTorah kula. He strikes him on the mouth and he forgets the entire Torah. Mipnei shenaseh adam chaser, because at that moment he is made a human being, and a human being is always in a state of lack. V'davar zeh nira bapeh. And this lack, this fundamental lack that is always present in the human experience, is expressed in the mouth. Why? Well, it's davar pasha, because when you're hungry, when you feel like you're lacking, you need to eat something. B'peh shel tinok miyad rotze lionik. Right? It's an instinct. Immediately after a person leaves the womb of their mother, the first thing that they do instinctually is they want to nurse. It's expressing how he's desiring something because he's lacking. He feels that lack. That's the first experience of being human. The fact that a person is always hungry, he always feels that he's lacking and he needs to eat something in order to fill that lack, in order so that he can continue to exist. That's what it means that the malach strikes him on the mouth. Meaning there's a blow. There's a wound on the human being. that the human being is always feeling a lack, and he always feels like he needs to add something else in order to fill the lack. And ends off the Maharal. The ayin masha amarnu b'sefer gvuras Hashem in Perach Chav Ches. Rabosai, these two interpretations of Sasra al-Piv are two sides of the same coin. The ability to externalize our chachma and make the externalized domain its own thing that has been excised and cut off from the eternal domain, that makes you forget the Torah. That is the same experience that causes this fundamental feeling of lack constantly. Because when the world, as you experience it, is just a fractured world of words and labels, when a person is in that state of consciousness, they are constantly plagued with lack. They are constantly hungry. They're constantly looking for something to fill the void. They can't fill the void. They're always hungry. There's no settling of the mind. When a person can step back from that consciousness and understand that the externalizing force that we have with speech is only in order to express the internal world, where there's wholeness, then it's not a tool that it becomes a tool to express Torah, not a tool it's not a tool that makes you forget the Torah. It's a tool that expresses Torah. But to the extent that we are living in this external domain, in this externalized domain, the speech makes us forget the Torah. And we always have to understand. We always have to understand this is the avoda of our Talmud Torah. To hone in on the internal space, and only when that has been developed and digested and thought about, then the tools of speech, the Yaft Elokim Liyefes, can be applied and used to shine the light out. Al Zeh Ne'emar, Al Zeh Ne'emar, in the Mishnah and Avos, Parag Gimel, Mishnah Yud Gimel. Amar Rabbi Akiva, Siag L'Chachma, the thing that guards your wisdom, Shtika. The thing that guards your wisdom is silence. If you start speaking too much, you're going to forget the Torah. Don't speak too much. If you can be silent, then you won't forget the Torah. That'll be a siag. It'll guard your Torah to make sure you don't forget it. To make sure that the whole enterprise of speaking out and articulating and describing and explaining won't make you forget the Torah. If you can do that, if you can be silent, and commune with the inner world, that is a siag. It will guard your Torah. And Bezrat Hashem, let's take a lesson from Yosef HaTzadik, who was sent into exile for our sake, who in his merit the world will be saved, right? The Mashiach ben Yosef, that has a role to play in bringing about the full potential of mankind. He was sent into this exile in order to learn the Shivim Lashon. And there was a horrible, painful price that he had to pay, that it ripped him away from his source. It did. It ripped him away from his source. It sent him into exile. It ripped him away from his family. It ripped him away from his soul. It ripped him away from the internal domain of Torah. But that exile was necessary in order to develop the tools of the Shivim Lashon. But then it is incumbent upon every one of us to bring those tools back to the internal domain of Torah, to make sure that they are not tools that make us forget the Torah, but tools that allow the Torah to be laharchiv. As David HaMelech says, Saros libi harchiva. Expand the narrowness of my heart.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.